let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the award-winning podcast where we talk about everything gaining, feedism, and everything plus size. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're welcoming to the show Bobby Umar.
Hi there. Happy to be here.
Hey, Bobby, how are you today, mate?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm enjoying the downtime.
Yes, 'tis the season for it, I'd say.
Yeah,
Bobby,
I agree. I mean, for me, the downtime is a time of reflection. It's a time of, what am I planning for the new year? And also just taking the time to, I guess really immerse myself in the things that I really care about.
Absolutely. A time of self-investment and reflection and hopping onto little podcast recordings. So with that said, Bobby, are you ready to get into it, mate?
I am ready to get into it.
Fabulous. Well, listen, I think a first and good place to start, for anyone who's listening who hasn't come across you before, what do you want the listeners to know about you?
So I've been a motivational speaker for about 20 years, but then after the pandemic happened, I switched into coaching, and now I still do speaking on things like soft skill leadership, digital content strategies, personal branding, things like that, culture, things like that. But I also am a coach. So I help people land a TEDx talk or help them become paid speakers or help them build their digital thought leadership. And then I have a partner. I have two kids. They are in grade 12 and grade 10, about to become fully functional adults. And they are a big passion of mine as well. And I'm also a big advocate for, I guess, causes that are around things where people are struggling, whether it's people are struggling or marginalized communities, things like that. Those are things that are very important to me. But I'm happy to be here.
And in this long career of public speaking and coaching and motivational speaking, you've discussed living with body image challenges. So can you describe how they've shaped your self-perception and influenced your approach to navigating the world?
That's a very long answer and a loaded question. So let me start by saying that I know that a better me is a better everything else. And so when I struggle or have had to navigate these things, not addressing the problem and avoiding the problem is not really the best thing. It's better to actually address it, get support, manage it, process, therapy, mindset, whatever you need to go through that. So because I know that in the history of my life, there have been times where I've delayed or canceled events because I felt, pretty shitty about myself, right? Like I didn't want to go. Or I canceled a workshop and I postponed it a month or two because I was like, like right now my weight's really bad and I don't really want to be seen in public. Like, that stuff. So that stuff would impact my life. This is both personal and professional. So professional events, like a networking event that I might go to, a conference I might go to, a workshop that I'm actually running myself, I would cancel or postpone. And then personally, like maybe there's a party, maybe there's a wedding, and I'm like, I don't want to go. Like I don't feel the need. Or worst case scenario, a beach party, right? So it's like I don't want to sit there and just in my t-shirt and shorts and everyone else is swimming. So it's definitely something that has impacted me. Now I've taken many steps over the years to try to navigate those things and try to overcome them and try to manage them better. And I definitely feel I'm in a much better place now than I was 15 years ago. A lot of work has been done, and I definitely feel I'm in an incredible, actually a way, way better place than I was. And then, of course, a lot of these things happen in childhood that I noticed, or it just became the norm for me. And so there's a whole story about how that all happened. And I'm not sure if you want me to tell you it now, because I can tell you briefly what happened, but I'll leave it to you guys.
I mean, honestly, there's so much in your story that would be great to have the opportunity to dig into. But something I'd like to personally circle back to for a second, because you mentioned you've got two kids. One of them's in grade 12, so they are quite literally on the verge of stepping into adulthood. And I'm not someone who has children myself, but, reflecting on my own experiences growing up in a household with many, many kids, the world around us influences how we perceive ourselves. None of us are immune from the sort of trappings of the world and whatnot. I'd be curious, you do these TED Talks, you're a coach, a real leader in a lot of these circumstances. How does that translate to what you've had to deal with as a father, especially as global trends shift with regards to things like body image and self-acceptance and all of these narratives. How do you deal with all that?
Well, you guys ask really big, deep, overarching questions. I mean, yes. So being a parent, absolutely. I mean, and that's kind of where the story, the I guess the journey of suffering and self-loathing ended, and where the transformation began. It began with my children because, and I'll briefly tell you again. So when I was young, I would be in swim change rooms, and I remember someone made fun of my undershirt I was wearing, and but in my culture, most people don't change in front of other people, right? So it's not a common thing. So I eventually started changing in the bathroom. Like I would go to the washroom and I would go in the stall there and I would change there because I was embarrassed about like doing it in front of all these other people, and that happened in childhood. And then in grade 9, I joined the swim club, and we used to go to this really great water park, indoor water park. And it was a lot of fun. But at that time, I had started to gain some weight, had some rolls, and I remember I was like holding my rolls like this as we would stand around talking to our friends. And that moment also triggered something, which was basically after that, I think I was 13 or 14 years old. But after that session, I stopped taking my shirt off in public, and this thing lasted for 25 years. I just never did, which impacted, going to water slides and going to the beaches and hanging out with my friends. I remember when I was 17, went to Disney World and we're staying at a resort, and all my cousins and siblings went swimming, and I refused. And they're like, "Why don't you go? Come on in, look something." I just didn't want to go in with my shirt on because everyone else had their shirts off, and I was too embarrassed. So this has dogged me for a long, long time. So then the big story though is my son. So he's 3 years old, and we were at a beach. And with the kids, I didn't, like we would go to the change rooms and we with the other parents, and we're changing there. I didn't want to go to a room. I was like, you know what? I want to learn, like, just make it normal. Like, it's okay. We don't have to have a private room or go in the washroom. Let's just change them here. Everything's fine. But then we're at a beach one day, and then my son said, "Dad, you want to go swimming?" Oh, yeah, let's go swimming. He's like, "Yay!" And then he turns to me and goes, "Daddy, aren't you going to take your shirt off?" Because his shirt was off, and everyone else's shirts were off. Well, not all of them, but most people. And I looked at him, and what felt like hours, but it was literally 5 seconds. I said, "Of course I am." And so I took my shirt off. First time in 25 plus years. I was mortified, terrified on the inside, but there's no way I wanted to show it. I didn't want him to go through what I went through. So I was like, I have to do this for him, and I had that courage to do so. We walked to the water, and I was pretty upset and nervous, and just again, it felt like everyone was staring at me. But after like 3 minutes of that, and we're in the water and we're playing, and he's laughing and joyously, I began to let go of those feelings of people staring at me, and it was really great to have that moment because 25 years is a very big buildup, and so that was a great turning point for me where I realized, okay, you know what, this is important to my kids. It's important to model values that are important to them and important to me, that I want them to grow up with, and not to feel, to love their bodies, not feel shame. And that also led to more work with the kids on accepting their bodies and things like that. My daughter especially also started to, let's say, gain weight, but I would just say, you're beautiful, or you're beautiful, I love you. And when she was 4 years old, she came to me and she showed a product of a Clairol product, and it had like some model, some beautiful model with her hair. And she's like, "Daddy, I wish I was beautiful like her." And I was like, "Honey, you are beautiful. You are beautiful." And I wonder, like, as a parent, you're with the kids, but as soon as they go to Jake junior kindergarten and kindergarten school, they get information from other people. And she was getting this from, like, we never said that kind of stuff, and she's believing this. I'm like, wow. And so, yeah, I think it's a huge part of what is important for me as a parent, and role modeling best practices for them so that they can grow up to be fulfilled and, and thriving.
And
Absolutely. I mean, well, I was just going to say, like, as two queer men, that really resonates, I think. of a certain generation, you grow up and sort of understand that the world has a very specific viewpoint of you, or there is a very specific expectation of you. And when you don't match that, it's not simply that other people are saying something that is incongruent. You are steeped in a culture that, because you don't see yourself reflected, you wind up, there is no other way to go but to feel bad about your situation and to discredit yourself. And there's something very beautiful to hear about a parent who recognizes that sense of trauma within them. In 25 years, like you say, that's nothing to snuff at. That is potent, that is powerful. And in an instant, you know that you need to overcome that right there in that moment for your child, for your son. And what a beautiful thing to do. Parents often express a sense that, as much as you're there to raise your children, something about the innocence of a child heals something in you as well. They provide opportunities for you to grow and to learn. How absolutely beautiful. And I think that's going to be a real resonant theme as we continue on this conversation today.
And I was curious to know, like, the way that you're handling raising the children, to have a positive body image, how does that help you work with other people? Like, how much do those two things influence one another?
Very much so. So knowing, having gone through my own transition of, therapy and what I've learned about myself and working with the kids, and trying to be a better parent, every single person I work with or coach with, I know that we all have experiences from the childhood and beyond that, things we repress, things that have affected our mindset. And it's important to uncover some of these things because they are there. And most people who want to be helped, they have, everyone I work with has some sort of mindset issue. And every mindset issue is usually rooted in something that's either a personal experience or a financial experience or some sort of challenge, trauma. If you're bullied, it affects you. If you have an accident, got hit by a car, it affects you. Like all these things will affect you. And so a big part of my work now is the mindset piece. And also even my friends. Like I have friends who are in, let's say, very toxic relationships, or I have friends who have body image issues. And I proactively will start the conversation. Because people, it's really hard to start a conversation. Like, so I find that using the Brené Brown's practice of sharing vulnerability first, I'll share with people in my family or my friends, hey, listen, I've struggled with weight all my life. And, if you ever want to talk about it and just be like, good buddies talking about stuff, I'm here for you. And sometimes it opens up a really great conversation that helps both of us.
I love that. And even in those moments, right, a sense of, oh gosh, how are people describing this these days? A sense of a softer masculinity, which I think is very, very important. A sense of a man who is very willing to communicate his feelings, his experiences, and build community and camaraderie of something that a lot of us probably do experience. But because we don't talk so openly about it and don't share in that with one another, it's sort of presumed that maybe it doesn't impact people as deeply when in fact it does. And I would imagine for someone, when I think about the positions you've occupied, a sense of that isolation almost reinforces a lot of that shame and a lot of that trauma to say it must be kept hidden, or in order to fulfill this role you have to tamp it down. So I think there's a real power in that softness to express and to connect with other people on that. And if I can ask to zero in here, the mental load, shall we say, around a body image, what does that feel like day to day? How does it show up, and how do you cope with it?
Yeah, there is a mental load because it happens pretty much, it follows you everywhere you go. And, one thing I learned in therapy with the binge eating thing was that I tried to eliminate binge eating from my life, and I had to accept the fact that it's always there. And how do I manage instead? And that's the exact. And then there's this movie called A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, and and in that at the end of the movie, the people that were causing his hallucinations, they were still there, but he was just ignoring them, right? And that was actually that's a very powerful thing to know that it doesn't go away completely, but it's still kind of there. So similarly, I think for me, the body image thing, it's it's there all the time because as soon as like, for example, as soon as I go to the washroom, I look down and I see, maybe a roll, and I notice it. I certainly don't get as impacted by it like I used to. But whether I'm tugging at my shirt or I'm putting a pillow in front of me to hide some sort of like these are subconscious things that I'm doing, but it follows me every single day of my life wherever I go. So, but and then your question is, how do I manage them? Well, I mean, like I said, is 25 years now of taking my shirt off in public. There was followed by 15 years of a variety of things that I did, certain activities with my kids in terms of educating them, certain things for my therapy, and also several personal experiences along the way that I tried to, I try to challenge myself to do something a little bit different to affect this, right? So all that stuff works along with, because I think part of it is also the challenge that it's pretty lonely. Like I mean, certainly I could talk to my partner about it and I could talk to my friends about it, but I also sometimes feel I don't want to burden them with that kind of stuff all the time. Because if it's daily, like I wouldn't want to talk about it daily. Oh, today I felt like, oh, this. But I've had to like just reflect back and try to reframe in my own mind how I see things, what I'm working on. One of the things that I was told to do is look at something in the mirror that I liked looking at, as opposed to what you don't like looking at. Different practices like that have helped me along the way. And I also have comfort knowing that if I really felt absolutely shitty about myself, I would go talk to someone. Like, just like, for example, like if I felt really shitty about my body or something, I would tell my wife, hey, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit bad about this. Let's go work out. Let's eat better tonight or whatever. And they're totally, cool with supporting that. Or just 2 weeks ago, I had my latest binge eating episode, and I decided to talk to my community. I run a community of small business owners, and even though I'm their leader, I went and I said, "Look, I want to share with you something because I think it's important to share, and I want to be the role model and example that when you're going through stuff, it's good to share it with people." And so knowing that I have a partner, and knowing that I have friends, knowing that I have a community, definitely, even if I don't use them, I know that it's there, and that's really helpful to me.
Living with diabetes adds another layer to this, to every single thing that you do. How has it affected the way you think about your self-care and health?
Well, when I became diabetic, that was a big one too, because there was something permanent about it. Like, I have it, your pancreas can't do this anymore, and it's no going back because there's no cure. It's meds, it's diet, exercise, and you have to manage. It's something you have to manage the rest of your life. And but then the good news, if you manage it properly, there won't be any complications for your whole life. So there's people who are completely like, symptom free. That's great. But yeah, that permanence of it definitely weighed on me the first time it happened. Um, and now it's a constant reminder. I take my meds every day, so it's a reminder. Okay, I'm taking these meds because I'm mindful of my sugar, especially during the holiday time. There's lots of sugar around, so it's funny. It's funny to think this. Taking my meds actually is a reminder of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Just like when I weigh myself, it's a reminder of people say, "Why do you weigh yourself? If, like you're just gonna get depressed about being overweight." I'm like, no, I actually like weighing myself. I like having metrics. I like numbers, whether they're good or bad, right? If it goes up by a pound, that's okay. I had a turkey dinner last night, no big deal, right? If it goes down by a pound, great. I guess my effort has been fruitful. So I like the metrics. I like checking my blood sugar number. I like taking the meds because the reminder, and to me, that's partially self care. I am caring about myself in a manner to take care of myself. And then that can lead to better choices when I'm going to have breakfast or lunch or things like that. So, yeah, I think that the diabetes thing, having it is something I'm owning. It's something that I think makes me feel more in tune with taking care of myself, and it's part of my regular routine. So I appreciate it now, because if I didn't have that, I would probably, eat more terribly the way I had my whole life and not do anything about it. Right? It's like if I didn't have diabetes, maybe I wouldn't have that wouldn't have been a trigger, as well as we mentioned the trigger with my children too.
So much of this really resonates with even like the gainer's journey, right? Like so many of us, the trick to progress in whatever body transformation we want to achieve is finding the rituals that allow us to feel connected to what it is that we're doing. Not just I'm doing this to achieve the goal, but why do I want this in the first place? Why am I doing this? And that mission of it's loving myself, right? It is taking care of myself in a fashion. And so some of those concepts that can make us feel uncomfortable, diabetic medication and the ideas of things that maybe represent a sense of permanence that I think cause a lot of anxiety in people. A sense of that ritual helps us to navigate those tumultuous waters and
Yeah.
operate more smoothly in life. And as you say, taking better care of yourself in one regard means that there is better opportunity to treat yourself in another, where maybe you need a little bit of that excess to to get you through a day if it's particularly tough. So I think that absolutely resonates with a lot of the mission that we represent here with our show as well. And I want to say thank you for sharing all this because, you know, over the years when we've gotten to speak to people about their own weight journeys or their own diet situations, it can be fraught with a lot of, I mentioned before that sense of shame. I think it's a repeating theme, that sense of, why am I here? I shouldn't be here. There's expectations, and we're kind of battling all sorts of internal and external forces all the time. And, I think yeah, it's just, there's a lot to it.
The shame is always there too, right?
Mm.
And what is wrong with me? Why the hell can't I do this? Yeah, it's always there, but we have to find ways to navigate it, manage it. That's why talking about it is so important. It's important to me to talk about it here and everywhere else, is because I know that 90% of people, never really say anything or share anything, but they're listening, right? And
Mm.
you impact. They feel like they're like, to me, sharing vulnerable stuff like this is important because people out there need to understand they are not alone. A lot of us are going through this in different ways, whether it's, our body image, or whether it's our weight, or whether it's any other things we're going through, the shame that we feel about various things. I have shame about lots of things too. I've cultural shame. I have body, like, there, but I'm managing it but I've talked about it. And so I think that's helped me build a stronger mindset. And I think, but if you can talk about it or find someone to talk to about it, and really find a way to reframe things, it's going to be so much better for you wherever you are.
Absolutely. The power of community, really. Understanding
Yeah.
that not having to shoulder things alone and having that sense of community support. And Tim, I'd like to throw to you here about this. Bobby's mentioned coming from a certain cultural background, right? Bobby's a man of color, you're mixed race black. I'm curious for you. You've shared sometimes, like, the dissidence between a white parent and a black parent, and sometimes there's like little things that don't quite add up. How is that for you when you consider maybe the black side of the family, the black side of your experiences, like body and this sense of sharing with one another? How does that relate for your experiences? Is that something you identify with, or was that something you didn't get to have as much growing up?
I mean, it's a little bit complicated because my dad's side of the family isn't particularly close. Like we were sort of there with them more out of obligation than out of desire. Like it was much more of a, we're gathering because it's what you do, not because we actually want to see each other. So when it came to food, I don't know. I don't feel like they've constantly pushed food on me. I feel like that was more my mom's side of the family. That was the Polish descendant side of the family. And it wasn't really something that we ever talked about. Neither side of the family ever talked about anything. If ever there was something that went on, it was a very much, let's just keep it under wraps and keep the peace. This was not a family. Inevitably, we would be led to confrontation with one another because of all of the compartmentalizing we were doing. But yeah, I because we weren't terribly close, I don't feel that I ever got to address body image issues or food issues with that side of the family at all.
I mean, Bobby, let me put this to you then. A man of a certain generation, when you think about the way in which you would have been raised with certain cultural expectations and the idea of what is appropriate, and then you have to translate for the next generation what you want to pass on and what you want to challenge and change. Do you feel like these days there's enough dialogue in cultural circles about what needs to be done there for the betterment of the next generation, or is it all still a little bit specious, a little bit not really spoken about enough?
Oh, I don't think it's ever spoken about enough. And I think that, going back to what Tim said, in my culture, so my culture is Pakistani and Muslim, right? And the Pakistani folks, they don't talk about their problems. They don't seek therapy. Like, it's very rare. Like, it doesn't happen. They just repress it and hold it in. I had a big fight with my dad several years ago, and I'll never get to talk to him about it because he won't want to talk about it. I have to learn to live with it and resolve it on my own or in my own way. And that's a challenge, right? And same with food things are really interesting too, because food is a big part of our ritual and celebrations of life and things that we do. And so it's all there. So in one aspect, all my family are all pretty large. We all have varying sizes, but I'm mostly leaning on the large size. But also, no one cares, which I think is good. Like I think it's good, like just accept people who they are. But then at the same time, then you have parents saying, "Well, why are you so overweight?" So it's like, okay, well, I okay, but what about Uncle Aunt and all these cousins? Like, okay, so that's and the opposite thing happened time when I went on a keto diet and I started to like lose weight. My mom got mad at me. She's like, "Why aren't you eating?" I'm like, "Well, because I'm doing this plan. I'm trying to lose weight." And she got mad that I was insulting my sister-in-law. We're at their house for dinner. Like I said, I'm eating the chicken. I'm just not eating the rice and the naan. Like it's okay. Everything's good. But she got upset on the other end about how I wasn't eating. I was like, okay, well, this is really confusing. It's complicated, as Tim said, very complicated about that in terms of how it all works. But yeah, I think your family is the initial people that had that impact on you. Like when I was young, my family and all my aunts and uncles loved the fact that I ate a lot. I was a skinny child, but I ate a lot of food, and I would say, "Oh my God, this food's so good! I love this food, it's so good." And so they loved me for that because I would compliment all the aunties and uncles about what I was eating and stuff. But then that story became part of my narrative. Oh no, Bobby had 2 plates of curry, and he had 4 chicken drumsticks, and or he had three cheeseburgers at McDonald's. Like, and I used to that was something. It was a pride I had, right? But then what happened is that caught up to me, and I started to gain weight significantly.
Maybe it kind of helped that like I can't remember a time growing up that that either of my parents ever criticized someone for their weight. Like I heard them sometimes criticize people for the way they looked, but I don't remember it ever being tied up in their weight. So maybe that's the reason why. And looking back on it, I don't think that either grandparents ever did that either. So, like honestly, all of the toxic fat phobia that I ever encountered was in school.
Yeah, I didn't. You're right. I didn't have as much within my family. The family shame that I got was about modesty and things like that, but it wasn't really about my weight. That came from school or the community gym locker or things like that, where it kind of came up.
And you've described wanting to share a story that's often untold. What is it like to live with the binge eating disorder? Because you said that it's like always there, even though you assumably like over the hill of it, that it's still always there, So what is that like for you?
Yeah, so for the binge eating thing, like for the longest time, it was undiagnosed. And I didn't know what it was. Now, part of it might be associated with the ADHD that I have, but for the most part, when I got the diagnosis, that was actually really helpful to me because I could at least assign some sort of label to it that I could own and not feel so much guilt about. So, like being diagnosed with ADHD and being diagnosed with binge eating disorder, both those things allowed me actually to not feel so bad about things that happened in the past. I can now process, oh, that was ADHD, or oh, that was binge eating disorder, so I don't have to feel bad about myself as much. I'm struggling with this challenge, so I actually enjoy that aspect. But I was saying before, like one of the things that I had to learn about binge eating disorder was that I had to, I kept trying to eliminate it, but that wasn't really working, and so I finally decided, oh, you know what, I need to figure out, I have to recognize this is always going to be there, and how do I manage it? And I came up with a plan. Like there's 3 things that come up. One is manage the severity of the binge because binges are either like a quasi binge or moderate binge or severe binge. Severe binge is when you probably will throw up or it's just you palpitate, pain all night, things like that. And then moderate is enough that it's just a really really terrible night. And then the quasi is more like, okay, you know what, I almost lost control there, but it's noticeable. And so when you want to manage the severity of the binge, the second thing you want to manage is the time frame between the frequency, because when you binge, it's either going to happen every day or it's going to happen, so you want them like in weeks apart, months apart. So the binge that I had a couple weeks ago, that was after several months of not binging. So it had been a while, which is a good thing, right? And then the third one, which I think is the hardest one, is the transition back into your regular routine. Because once you binge, you could theoretically keep binging for weeks. And what you want to do is you want to recover as soon as you can. So sometimes it's the weekend, sometimes it's the next day, sometimes it's that night. If let's say I binge at lunch, at nighttime I decide to have a light salad and just, chill, and that's great. But that recovery is also a big piece of it too. So whenever the binge thing happens, that's pretty much what I do to try to manage it. And it's been a really helpful thing for me, because now when the binges happen, while there is some guilt and shame about it happening, I'm glad I have a process to navigate it better. So that binge happened, and then there hasn't been a binge since, right? So that was 2 weeks ago. So I think that's great.
And something I'd like to ask you about here, because when you posted this story originally, you said that friends reached out, but your family didn't. And
Oh yeah.
you've already shared with us a little bit about the narratives with your family and things you've had to learn to accept. But considering how powerful this is to have to, and again for the first time to share that story, to speak it, that's so much power there. How did that feel to sort of see that reflection of, once again, the family is not engaging how I might want them to, but the chosen family, the people in my life, the friends are. How was that?
Yeah, and I'll briefly tell the story, which was, the diabetes thing, was slowly getting worse and worse. I was taking more and more meds, and I was also binge eating before I was seeking therapy. And I remember I took my daughter to a music class. She must have been like maybe 4 years old. And then she was in the class, and I was outside typing this. I typed this manifesto, I'll call it, called "What the F is Wrong with Me," is what I called it. And I talked about the fact that I'm binging, and I explained what's going on. I'm on all these drugs, and I hate it. I feel out of control, and I lied to my family because I eat a full meal at 4 p.m. and I have a dinner with them at 6 p.m. And all the stuff that I was doing, the lies, the feeling, the weight, the body, all this kind of stuff. I told them that, when I wake up in the morning and I look down, I swing from my bed, I look down, and I see the roll of fat, and I literally hate myself. And I laid it all out in like 5 or 6 points in a post. And I was like, okay, do I send this to a couple of private people? I don't know. So I clicked public on Facebook, send, and gone. And then I went to my daughter. Son had singing lessons. We were gone the whole day. I came back like 4 or 5 hours later, and there were hundreds of comments and messages, friends, and all these people saying that. And from that process, it was great. I got a nutritionist to help me. I got my best friend to go to yoga with me. I got a personal trainer. Like, it was just people were really, they couldn't believe I was sharing this such really deep, dark stuff, because I hadn't really done that. And then my family, no, not a peep. And for 4 days, now it was great to have all my friends support me. Like, that was really, it was very loving. I appreciate it. And that was the start of my whole transition. That was in 2013. So my daughter was 3. And basically, I started this Facebook group called Fit in My Life. And the reason I like that double entendre is because I'm trying to get fit in my life, but I'm also trying to make everything fit in my life, which is hard. And so I started that journey, and I started documenting it, I started sharing it. But 4 days later, I spoke to a cousin first, and he's like, "Man, I can't believe you had the balls to share something like that." Because, as he said, we don't do that kind of stuff. And the reason why my family didn't, my mom, and then my mom finally said, like, why would you say something that's so embarrassing and make yourself look bad in front of people? And I don't think they understood the fact that, and maybe I didn't know either at the time, but now I share things very publicly because it's owning it, it's empowering, and it helps me process by writing it all out. Like some people write in a journal, I like to write a post and I'll share it with people. And usually I ended off with some sort of aspirational thing, like a hope for something better, as opposed to just a total rant. But yeah, I think that it was great to have so many amazing people in my family, or sorry, my friends, like, reach out to me. That was really great. It's very empowering. It's been that's actually been a big catalyst for me, because, like, the people who were there in the beginning and now they see me, hey, how's it going? Like, they'll ask me about, because, people don't want to ask them, like, hey, how's your binging? How's your body image? Like, they don't want to do that. But I've told them, you can talk to me about it. I am open to talking about it if you ask me in the right way. It's like, yo, Bobby, what's with the fat? Like, you can't say that, but, like, you can ask, hey, how's the weight thing going? The only thing that I don't like for my friends is hey, the thing they do I don't like is when they say, "Hey, Bobby, you look like you lost weight." Don't ever say that, because if I have lost weight, great. But if I've actually gained weight, I feel like shit. So I don't know how you're determining that I've lost weight or not. Like sometimes it's pretty obvious when I've lost 20 pounds. Yeah, oh my God, you can see. But just the other day, someone said, "Hey, Bobby, you look like you lost weight." I'm like, actually, I haven't. But thanks for noticing. Like I haven't lost weight. I don't know where you're coming from, but you know,
People can be
uh,
so careless with the way that they throw things
yeah,
around
Mm,
sometimes, and you
they mean well though, right?
well, I
they
mean, it's
do.
like part of it makes me think that they mean well, but the other part is like sometimes I think people absentmindedly will just throw something out because they are uncomfortable with the silence,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
so they'll just say something,
right.
and that's a point where I'm always like, no, that's why we all need to think a little bit before we start talking.
Well, look, we all live in a culture where we have normalized the idea that we have the right to say what we want about people without repercussion. And we normalize it in the world because we think it is normal that we should say this about models, about performance, about people of all sorts of designations, that we comment on bodies, how they look, etc. And so we translate that to just the everyday people that we know. And we have in our mind the presumption that to say this is the right thing to do. This is the correct social cue, that you should be trying to lose weight, that you must want to lose weight, and that this is what I say when I'm trying to be like, oh, you look good today. You've lost weight. In your instance, maybe you haven't, and that causes a dissonance. For people like us, we're trying to gain weight. So when people say, oh, you look like you've lost weight, absolutely devastating. I'm like, no, that's the complete and total opposite. Devastating, my God. But you're absolutely right. Like the community with friends who can be loving and supportive is wonderful. And I love how you framed it, how they may say, how are you going with the weight thing? In a way that is relatively neutral. It's saying, listen, I'm asking about this topic because I know it's important to you, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to approach it with some language that's relatively neutral. I'm not trying to put power or expectation, just how are you? How is that going?
Well,
Share
the
with
best
me.
the best way to say it is to say, "Hey, how are things going with that thing that you were talking about earlier?" Because now it's me with the frame and the owning what's going on. How is it? You mentioned binging. How's it going? You mentioned the weight challenge. How's that going? Because I've said it and they've referenced that. That puts the power in my end in terms of what I want to say and how I want to say it.
Absolutely.
And I want to
Absolutely.
mention something else that I just thought about too, which is
Go
in
for it.
terms of a mind set shift. You see, yeah, you mentioned people critique all the time online. They feel like they can say whatever they want, and one of the things that I'd always see is, oh my God, look how fat you are. Have a salad, or on the opposite end, oh my God, she's so skinny. You know, eat a muffin or something, right? And, I had to come up with kind of my own mantra. I was like, look, I understand you guys want to say that stuff, but to me, let's start out with they're beautiful. Let's start with that. Like to me, I understand the impact of health. So I always say that everyone is beautiful and everyone should strive to be healthy, and that's it. Like I think that's a fair thing to say. And no matter what size you are, I mean, yeah, I'm always mindful of my health, and whether it's my physical health or my mental health or my blood work, my flexibility, my endurance, all these things. I think I get it, and I think that's fine. And it also reframed how I would talk about people. I remember there was a politician here local in Toronto, which is where Toronto, Canada, where I'm based, and some of you his name was Rob Ford, and he was the crack smoking mayor. A lot of people, but I remember I did a post and where I commented on his weight, and someone said, "Bobby, you shouldn't do that." And I was like, you know what, you're right. Why am I dissing his weight? I shouldn't be doing that. So I stopped, and and currently there's the guy in the U.S. Trump, and I critique a lot of things about that guy, but I
Mm-hmm.
never ever talk about his weight
Never go there about
because
his weight.
I don't think I should. I'm going to talk about all the actions that they take. You talk about
Yeah.
behaviors and actions, but there's no reason to personally insult someone's appearance. And so I'm really big on just fighting that and stopping that.
It's so important that we do. I've had to make a point to certain people online where it's like, I'm not necessarily a fan of this person. Don't put me in a position where I have to defend them,
Yeah.
because if you believe this person is not doing good things, That's for a reason. Talk about those reasons. If you're sat there saying that there is a laundry list of reasons that we shouldn't like this person, but the one word that comes out of your mouth is about the fact that he's fat, you are absolutely placing the fact that he is a fat person as more important and more evil as a concept
Right.
than
Right.
any of the other things that are being said about this person. It's a
Exactly.
part of the ways in which we propagate the fat phobia. And so we have to be mindful about how we have those conversations. Absolutely. And again, if they are that bad, I'm sure that we can find some talking points around what it
Right.
is that they are doing that absolutely can be dug into 100%.
And I was going to ask, since beginning the journey of writing your manifesto, getting into therapy, talking to a nutritionist, beginning some physical activity, how has it shaped or reshaped your relationship with food identity and self-worth?
Mm, my relationship with food. Well, one thing I'll say is that whatever I'm trying to do with my life and my health and food, it has to be something that's sustainable. I talked earlier about how I use keto, and keto had great results for me. I did love it, but I also think it's not sustainable. Like I still want to have ice cream once in a while. I still want to have chocolate once in a while. So creating something that's sustainable, I think, is really important. So I personally believe that I can eat whatever I want. It's just a question of moderation, frequency, how much, things like that. So like if I want to have a chicken curry, dinner or whatever, that's fine. Then what else do I eat the rest of the day? So it definitely makes me mindful of managing my day, my week, my month, things like that. I think that that's an important piece, but it's got to be something sustainable. So I definitely have adopted the policy that I'm allowed to eat whatever I want. I shouldn't stun myself from eating things, but be more mindful of what that impact is on those foods, and knowing that certain foods that let's say really fatty or sugary things like that. Well, okay, then I can still enjoy it with a small amount, or once a week as opposed to every day, because every day would be bad. But so I found ways to kind of navigate that and figure out what that is, what that works for me. So I've been able to maintain my weight or lose weight even by just taking the food I love. And chicken curry is a good example. I eat that quite often, and just having a smaller portion, right? And that works quite well to do so. So I think there's a lot there in terms of how that's changed my relationship with food. And I think the other thing I'll say is that when it comes to food, I also know my triggers, right? So I know what triggers a binge eating episode. So, for example, having lunch really, really late, the later I go, the more likely I'm going to binge, right? So, some days when you're working really, really hard and all of a sudden, oh my God, I didn't have lunch, and I'm going to have lunch at 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon, that's a much higher trigger for binging. And so I realized, you know what, I need to have some almonds or something, just something in the middle of my meetings to make sure I don't have that episode later on. So that's also how I think about managing the food aspect.
I think there's a lot here for people in our community to dig into as well. Sometimes there's real questions around how we amend our diets to achieve the things that we want to achieve. And for many of us who come from similar backgrounds, it's a way of recovering from a certain trauma with food. I think giving care and consideration to not just what we eat, but when we eat and how we're eating can be ways in which we can garner some sense of control around that. And as you say, you might be in a position where a trigger for you is the timing and it leads to situations.
Right.
The solution with the almonds, a very simple thing where it's a case of just plan to have something where you need to have it for if that eventuality should occur. And then you're covered. It's finding all the different ways to not only protect yourself in the moment, but protect yourself in the long run. You're sort of accounting for situations that may occur and knowing that it's okay if this uncertain thing should or should not occur. Because regardless of the eventuality, I have my answer here. We have a solution. We can move forward, and everything's going to be fine. So I
I
think
want to
that's very
add. I want to add
powerful.
one more. I want to add one more thing, which is also it's good to have a list of things that are healthy that you didn't realize you liked. So one of my nutritionists went through this whole thing. What are foods you what are foods you would like or try to eat? And next thing you know, I was like, oh, I've never had an avocado. And then she's like, you should try it. Okay, and I tried it. I was like, these are great, and avocados are great. Like, okay, I've added avocados, I've added broccoli, and things to my diet that weren't normally part of it, but I know they're healthy, and that's great. I now have a list of all these healthy things, including the almonds, for a little bit of protein. So having that list, I think, is incredibly important. And the second thing I'll say that you kind of alluded to, James, is if you know like that wedding is coming up, like my culture, brown weddings are 3 days long, so it's a lot. If you go in with a plan, you're more likely to have a better outcome of what you're going to do with that thing, as opposed to overeating all 3 nights and oh my god, I'm so sick. Having a plan. Oh, you know what? I'm going to try the food. If food is good, I'm going to have extra. If it's okay, because sometimes food at weddings are okay, then I'm just going to quit, and that's fine. And I think having that plan and mindset before you get there has better outcomes than just showing up and just okay, sirrah, sirrah, and then you're in trouble.
100%. Planning ahead to make sure that your food needs, whatever those needs are being accounted for. And I like that you mentioned things like avocados. We talk about this within our community as well. There are foods that people like to highlight and prioritize as, oh, this is what gets me results for what I'm looking to do. And that's great, baby, but like, have you thought about eating a carrot? Have you thought about trying a little something different, And sometimes it is as simple as saying, you can have the vegetables, cover them in a cheese sauce if that's really what that comes to. There are ways in which you can, navigate around it, depending on what your food goals are, depending on what your body goals are, your nutrition goals. I think all things are possible, ultimately. And sometimes we get stuck in the cultural rut of there's only one way to do the thing. But actually, there's so many different ways to do it. And if you give yourself the opportunity to play around with different foods, with new opportunities, new forms of cuisine, girl. Sure. Growing up in Australia, Southeast Asian and South Asian food is the ticket. It's so good. And yet, the amount of people I've met who's like, I've never had a butter chicken before. And I'm like, wow. First of all, that's not even like proper South Asian food, but like you haven't even had a butter chicken. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, find opportunities to have play with some fun new things. And that's, I think, another thing as well. With a lot of the dietary stuff, I would imagine people who deal with diabetes, it's a sense of, well, there are a lot of foods now that I can or can't eat, or I have to make amendments to. And sometimes, again, I think people get stuck in that rut of, well, that means restriction, and that means all the fun is gone. There's nothing good anymore. When actually there is so much that can be had to be experienced that you can still go, oh, I can live a very fulfilled food experience. I can still really enjoy a lot of things. I've just got to make some different decisions than maybe what I had done normally.
And I have two other points that just came up too when you're talking. One is food prep, right? So preparing and cooking your own food is also therapeutic and allows you to control what you want to do. So for example, when I was cooking some sort of a Chinese stir fry with chicken, and they wanted you to add all the sugar. I was like, well, you know what? How about if I add stevia? Would that work? And then I've added stevia to it. So now I have a no sugar, but still sweet. It still tastes sweet. Like, it's great. And you start to own a little bit of that. And the second thing I want to mention, which is kind of interesting thing, which is, I don't, my go-to is not a salad. It just isn't, but what I can say is that if I do have a salad, and let's say I have a salad and then I start having more and more salads. By the time I have the fourth or fifth salad, I start to feel the taste of all the things in the salad. I start to enjoy it. Because what happens is we're so, I don't know what the word is, but we're kind of overburdened, glutton with all this food that starts to, I think it dulls our senses. And when you can actually clean your system a little bit and you have the salad that fourth, fifth time, I start to really feel the taste of the radish or the lettuce or the carrot or the cucumber, and I start to enjoy it more if I just get to that fourth or fifth serving or in the week. It's good, but initially I don't want to do it, but when I get there, it actually tastes pretty good, and you start to see and you feel the taste of it, which is kind of interesting.
No, absolutely. And in fact, you say salad, my mind immediately went to my partner and I had this great recipe for a sweet potato dal that we made this huge batch, and so much of it went to waste because it was delicious, but my God, was it heavy. It was just, you could not get through it all. And then randomly had the idea of, oh, well, we have this like random thing of beetroot. Why don't we make like a very simple, like a beetroot balsamic salad situation? And that was the perfect accompaniment. Suddenly, this very heavy dal was being broken up by this very crisp and yet earthy but vinegary moment of the beetroot, which suddenly meant, oh, I can get through a lot more of this. I'm not feeling so weighed down by it. So again, things that people in our community struggle with is capacity and feeling like they're not able to have as much as they do. finding opportunities to play with that sense of light and shade in flavor and texture is really going to help you to like achieve a greater sense of, oh, I can do more with all of it, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's all of that's tied together.
Many people hide struggles like this. What pressures have you felt in the past to keep it private, and what would you say was the emotional cost?
Wow. Pressure to keep it private. Yeah. So, I mean, there's always pressures from family members who are uncomfortable with what you are sharing. I think that's something that they dislike. It becomes a problem. Although one time I did get an email from somebody, although again, really cowardly email with somebody with a kind of a private email. You couldn't tell who it was, but they said, "Hey, you spoke about your weight and your challenges on stage as a speaker." And honestly, I didn't like it. It made me lose confidence in you because why are you talking about this stuff? Like I want to hear about and that one really shook me because I was like, okay, this is affecting my public persona and my professional life that someone doesn't like it. But yeah, that was hard to hear. But again, it was somebody who didn't tell me who their name was, and from a private email, I couldn't tell, and so I thought that was a bit of a cowardly, shitty thing to do. So there's definitely an emotional impact when people critique you or online. I've been bullied where someone called me fat on Twitter, or somebody made fun of my hair, on LinkedIn. Like there's people, and they say these outrageous things, and even though it's hurtful in the moment, I think I've had a lot of practice with responding to. I respond to some people, and other people I let go. But I think what's really helped me navigate the criticism is empathy, because I've learned over the years, especially having been on Twitter during the really rough years of Twitter back in the day, is that people just say the craziest things, but most people project their pain, and they're going through whatever they're going through. And so if I can empathize with that person, and it doesn't excuse what they said or did, but if I can if I can empathize with the pain that they're going through, the trauma they're feeling, or what made them decide to say something like that, it makes it less harder on me. Like it doesn't feel as bad. I'm able to process it better, and me, and I can even maybe practice forgiveness and just let it go instead of this inherent need to respond. Because I'm the type of guy who definitely likes to respond, and so holding myself back is tough. But sometimes I practice that with empathy and with forgiveness. If you can empathize the person that they're just projecting their own pain, whatever, they say hurt people, right? So if you understand that and you can forgive that, then you can let it go and not have to respond and get into it. Because if you do get into it, it can be hours, if not days, of traumatic messages back and forth. So I'm not sure that answered the question.
No, you did. The question was about, the consequences of having to keep it private.
Yeah, and I think that the reason you don't want to keep it private is because you want to own it. You want to you want to control the narrative. You don't want people to control the narrative for you. So you have to be able to share this stuff, and the more and look, there's things we keep private, and there's things that I haven't talked about that I'd like to, but I can't. Some people, the binging thing, or the body image thing, they don't want to talk about it. But I think it's important to talk about it. Some people I know don't want to talk about it, so I don't. I know the people I don't want to bring it up with. And over the years, as I've tried to, navigate these things, I've tried a lot of different things to try to, work on this. Like another time, we went to a couple friend's house, and they were going to do the hot tub and the sauna, and I was like, oh man. And again, I had to. This is before I was still in the beginning of taking my shirt off, and I was like, okay, I need to just get used to this. But again, the more I did it, the easier it became. And I think that was really, really awesome. And I'll share one more thing, which it's an experience I had. And this is something I don't even share with like even my close friends, because I think it might make them uncomfortable. But I'm going to tell you guys. Many years ago, not many years ago, but like I was in Europe, and one of my best friends, she's German, and she took me to one of their saunas there. But the way it works at these saunas is that people don't wear anything. Like they basically go into these saunas, they're wearing absolutely nothing. That's the culture. And then afterwards, they go into this cold pool. Like, so they do the sauna, then they do a cold pool plunge, and then they shower. And it's all there in front of people, like in a group setting, like a group shower, and the pool's a public. And we talked about this for several months before my trip. And then the other thing is that my best friend is a woman, and she's heterosexual too. And so like, but she's one of my best friends. So I was like, like as long as we're in a group public thing, I didn't think it was a big deal. But I said, I think that as part of my journey, maybe this is something that would be helpful to me because I am struggling with the body image thing. And that would be kind of an empowering thing. And I told her, I said, I can only do it with someone who's one of my friends. Like if it was strangers, that would be hard for me. But if I'm with a friend or a couple friends, I think I could probably handle it better. And so we went, and I remember we got to the parking lot, and I just stopped and I said, "Listen, can we talk about this? Because I'm really nervous. And number one, I appreciate you being so open to supporting me in doing this, but I'm also mindful of the fact that you are a heterosexual woman, I'm a heterosexual man, and I don't know how this looks, but we've been friends for ages. But I want to thank you, but I'm also really nervous." And she's like, "Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's totally fine. Our culture, you'll find that when you get there, it's not that big a deal because everyone's there and that it's more empowering." So we finally get inside, and first we're in the change room, and then and then you put on a robe, and then that's fine. But then you go in the sauna, and that's where basically you take off your robes, you're in the sauna, then you come out, put the robe back on, then you go to the cold pool, take off robe again. Now you're swimming in the pool like this. Then you come out and then you shower, and there's other people there potentially too. And just like with my son with the shirt thing, it was very weird, surreal, and whatnot. And I have, so many, and at this point, like you're exposing all the roles and fats and all the different things about yourself that that personal and private. But after the first time was always the most uncomfortable, but the third or fourth time and be able to talk to her about it, I got to tell you, it was one of the most empowering things I've ever done. By the end of that day, I was so full of gratitude for being able to do this, gratitude for her for being there with me on this journey because and she's I mean and it was yeah. And there was a moment actually where they have these things where they have these specialty moments where an expert comes in and does something special. So they had this one moment where they were going to run this specialty event in one of the saunas. And so I go in there, and that was the part that was most empowering because I was in this large room with literally 30 people all side by side, my best friend right beside me, and we're all trying these salts and stuff, and we're trying them out, and I just couldn't believe that in this community we're able to do this, and there's no judgment, no anything. And so that whole day was probably one of the most profound experiences of my life, but it's something that I haven't really shared with anybody. I don't really talk. I maybe told one of my best friends, and of course my German friend, she knows, but that's it. I'm telling you because sometimes the 30 seconds of incredible courage can lead to the most amazing transformation of your life. And that 30 seconds where I started with that, what I was doing, led to several hours. And after that, I felt way more comfortable. And now, like in my journey now, I can't even believe, I can tell you now at this point in my life, from where I was before, changing in bathrooms and things like that, I am now even quite comfortable being completely undressed in a change room, which I never ever thought was possible. But I think it's because I did that one specific thing. And we did it twice. We did it once, and then another visit a couple years later, did it again. I now am so comfortable with my body in the context of a change room or whatever. I can't tell you how transformative it has been for my mindset. And I'm sharing that with you. It's a very private thing. I haven't told very many people, but I'm telling you because it was transformative. I think sometimes going out beyond your comfort zone, you get to the growth zone, and there's so much stuff there that I just think was really amazing. So.
No, absolutely. I had the privilege of experiencing my first German bath earlier this year, and it takes you a moment because you're there and you're naked, and everybody else is naked, and you do look at bits. You do because of course you do because it's all there. And then you find out just how quickly you stop caring because no one else is looking for that reason. And then suddenly you go, oh, if no one else cares, then why should I care?
Right.
And then you are just walking around nutty buddy. And it's fine. And suddenly you're not worried about, am I wearing the right bathing suit for this situation? Does it show me in the right light, the right colors, the right cut, the right hug? No, because all of my bits are just hanging out. And my concern is sitting in this hot tub and enjoying the jets. That's as far as it goes. And then you end up having all this. And then you leave that situation and you go, Yeah, like I didn't even need like the expensive spa treatments. I didn't even need someone to like massage me and do all these things to get like a relaxing experience out of it. It turns out what I needed was just an opportunity to shed all of the crap that society has put on
Yeah.
me over the course of my life, and I just need a couple of hours to just be in the buff and experience life afresh. And it's amazing how healing that is to put yourself in that new
The
situation.
communal vulnerability piece
Mm.
where everyone's doing the same thing is incredibly amazing.
And just having gone on such this incredible journey and reflecting on all the things we've talked about, right? This history with disordered eating and with binge eating disorder, with diabetes, with body image, all of this stuff. What what advice or insight maybe would you give to someone who is in that space right now? They're struggling with body image, maybe with health issues. We live in a society that right now is seeing a real return to the glorification of everything small. But we're also seeing more people than ever really trying to put themselves into positions of entrepreneurship and really trying to step out on their own to do new things. Again, it's a lot of push and pull. What kind of insights, what kind of advice might you give to someone who's in that position right now?
Wow, so many things I would say. So the first thing is you're not alone. A lot of us have these challenges and issues, and it's okay to feel this way because you're human. But also know that you are loved, and you're a lovable person, and you're a beautiful person, and you're worthy of love. And as we go through life, and things don't go our way, or we have a bad day, or things happen, it'll pass. You'll get through it. But don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for support, because when you do that and you have the courage to ask for that help, there are people who are going to step up and be there to help you, right? Not everybody, but there will be some. And so I think it's important to understand that. And then I think there's so much power in owning your story, owning your narrative, owning your journey. And that includes many things. It could be just announcing, this is what I'm doing, having a plan. It can be something internal that you have an affirmation for yourself in terms of what I'm doing and where I'm trying to go. It can be something as simple as just being a part of a community that will offer you that support and advice that you need. And, if you are able to, I have this phrase where it's like, fight for your life. Like, one of the best things you do from a legacy life, personal branding standpoint is fight for the life that you want. Fight for the person you want to spend your life with, fight for the career that you want, fight for the type of body you want to have, fight for whatever you need. And if you're willing to fight and have the courage to ask for help, I'll be there to help you fight on the same journey, because we're all in this kind of similar thing together. I think that communal vulnerability thing is so powerful. And if you put stuff out there, you'll find people who are willing to do that. And this is whether you're trying to get a better body image, whether you're trying to, get more muscular, or whether you're trying to build your business, right? Entrepreneurship also has its own mindset challenges, the up and down journey, the vulnerability, the sense of shame when you screw up on something. But again, you're not alone. And there's so many people out here who are having conversations, having dialogue, that are here to help you. And if you can find the people, find the community, find the tools, and find the process to own your narrative and own your journey, and then have that 30 seconds of true courage to act on something that you never thought you would have, I'm telling you, it's going to transform things to a much better place.
Now, as a way to sort of round out the conversation, we'd like to ask everybody this question. It's a little bit of a fun one. What food gives you life, and what food brings you peace?
I would say I'll start with the peace one. The food that brings me peace is the food that my mom used to make, especially now because my mom is going through Alzheimer's dementia, and so it's been a couple of years, and so now like she can't cook anything, and so I had to kind of grieve the process of, I'm never gonna have your food again. But when I think about my mom's sag gosh, which is basically spinach and beef, her chicken curry, her beef blau, all things she used to make, like that to me is absolute peaceful, like just basking in, I learned that one of my triggers, or one of my motivation was, food was love for my mom, right? And so for me, when I think of love for my mom and the food that we had, that to me is the most peaceful thing I can think of. And luckily, my sister cooks almost as well as my mom does. So sometimes when she makes stuff, it's very similar to what my mom made, which is great. So that's one. And then the food that gives me life. I'm gonna say like fun. I like fun snacky things. So like French fries, onion rings, potato chips, cheeseburgers, chicken wings. Those are very like festive kind of life things. I'm at a barbecue or I'm at an event or whatever. I'm outdoors in the summer on a beach. That to me is very lively and lifelike. I like those kind of snacky fun things. That I'd say those are my life ones.
Bobby, I just want to say thank you so much for today. I feel like we've had so much to talk through because there's been so much of this really reflective journey. A lot of it's because I think a lot of people listen to a story like this and they think to themselves, in storytelling, they go a linear path, right? It starts somewhere, it goes somewhere, we arrive, and that's it. But there's so much that goes swings and roundabouts. It's a lot of spirals. It's a lot of sometimes we take 2 steps back rather than the 2 steps forward we thought we were going to do. And I think that's so important to hear more stories like yours that really illustrate that it is not a straight up and down. It is not a straightforward. Sometimes you do take a step back. Sometimes you have to in order to take the next step forward. Sometimes it's a sidestep, and sometimes it's getting to leap by pushing yourself through situations where you've never done things before and you never quite know where it's going to take you. And I think that sense of authenticity and really that sense of bravery is really what's taken you to a moment like this. And I just want to say a massive thank you for sharing your story with us.
No, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share this stuff, and I will be very frank that I shared stuff with you that I've never shared anywhere before, which, having done over 300 podcasts, that's a revelation, man. So thank you so much for providing the space for me to do that.
Of course, and we take that as an honor, that after so many that we've provided a space and a narrative that's allowed you to feel comfortable sharing something new with us, so thank you. Now, where can our listeners find you online?
Great, thanks for that. So my website is raehanbobby.com, but you can find me on every social media platform there is. LinkedIn's probably the big one that I go to, but you also find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere else. But I would say my website, raehanbobby.com, as well as my other website, which is thoughtleadershipbranding.club. That's my membership community. And then, of course, LinkedIn, where I'm a LinkedIn top voice and influencer there. So those are the best places to find me. And yeah, thanks so much for allowing me to be here.
Of course. Well, listen, y'all, that is it for another week here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. Now, listen, y'all, if you liked this podcast, if you liked the episode, our guests, or just us in general, please share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram at thiccmouse and Grommr at orpheus. You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or visit our website at podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you'd like to become a financial supporter of the show, you can donate through our PayPal, and you can always email us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Spotify podcast.
Artwork, media design, editing, and production by James Heinzen.
With original theme music by CYMK.